Welcome back to the second part of the Brett Favre scandal. In this video, we're going to continue looking at the construction of the volleyball facility, Brett Favre's text messages, and the embezzlement of millions of welfare dollars for an anti-concussion treatment, and the state and the governor were all in on it. If you missed the first video of the Brett Favre scandal and you want to get caught up, it's video 3 of my Mississippi welfare embezzlement playlist. I'll leave the link in the description box down below. So where we are at in the story is the end of 2018. By this time, construction has started on the $6.1 million volleyball facility. As the cost of construction for the volleyball center continued to grow, Favre had to commit to pay more than $1 million himself that he expected to receive from MDHS. So he started to become a little antsy. Brett Favre has also been involved as a supporter and investor in this pharmaceutical startup company called Prevacus since 2014. The company was working on developing an anti-concussion treatment, which was right up Brett Favre's alley with the history of concussions in the NFL. I'm sure he's had quite a few himself. So around November of 2018, Brett Favre texted Prevacus founder Jacob Vanlandingham, encouraging him to reach out to the Mississippi Governor Phil Bryant for support. Great call with the governor, Vanlandingham texted in late November 2018. He's going to make some key connections for us to start at the FDA. Good job. So Brett Favre responds, don't know if legal or not, but we need to cut him in. And 3 days later, he sends another text that says, also, if legal, I'll give some of my shares to the governor. After first connecting with Nancy New, Vanlandingham texted Favre to ask if he knew John Davis, who was the director of the Mississippi Department of Human Services, which was Nancy New's nonprofit's primary source of funding. Yep, he is just like her, Favre wrote. Favre was in direct communication with Davis. The welfare director texted the athlete on Easter in 2019 to thank him for his friendship. John, thank you very much, and I am very proud to call you my friend. Have a wonderful, blessed day, Favre responded. According to a calendar entry entered by John Davis to Ted DiBiase Jr., who was working with John Davis at the time, Governor Bryant and Brett Favre requested to meet with welfare officials about the USM facility in January of 2019. The invite said that they also wanted to meet to discuss the educational research program that addresses brain injury caused by consciousness. Could that be Prevacus? So this invite was on January the 2nd, but in a separate meeting on January the 2nd of 2019, Brett Favre, Nancy and Zach New, Jacob Vanlandingham, and John Davis met at Brett Favre's house to discuss a deal. According to the civil suit filed by the state, it says Brett Favre was the largest individual investor at this point. He had invested $250,000 of his own money. At this meeting, they settled on $1.7 million in funding in exchange for a promise that Prevacus would locate its clinical trials to sites in Mississippi. After agreeing to a direct funding grant for the development of the anti-concussion treatment, MCEC sent $750,000 to Prevacus on January the 18th, and a contract for $1.7 million was signed the next day. Later, the news would funnel additional money into an offshoot called Presol MD for the development of a preventative cream. A concussion preventative cream, I assume. Following this meeting, Brett Favre gleefully messaged former Governor Bryant saying, we couldn't be more happy about the funding from the state of Mississippi. In fact, Nancy New is going to meet with Joe at Tradition the following week. The paper said Joe refers to Joe Cannizzaro, who's a New Orleans businessman who has connections to Bryant. I'm not really sure about all those details, but it's really irrelevant to this part of the story. So the week Prevacus was supposed to receive his first round of funding from Nancy New, Brett Favre texted his partner, if this all works out, we need to buy her and John Davis. Surprise him with a vehicle. I thought maybe John Davis, we could get him a Raptor, which is Ford's top-of-the-line truck. Minutes later, Favre followed up with, honestly, give me your thoughts on what you think all this means, when we will make money. On March 18th of 2019, Brett Favre texts his buddy John Davis at MDHS and says, hey bro, brother, Deanna, and I still owe $1.1 million on volleyball. Any chance you and Nancy can help with that? They don't need it at the moment. You and Nancy stuck your neck out for me with Jake and Prevacus, I know, and that's gonna turn out very good, I believe. John Davis responds, "We value you, Brett, and are willing to always be supportive. Did not look at it as sticking our neck out as much as helping a friend and potentially many, many more who are in need of treatment. Your welfare dollars at work." But yet, even though John Davis is the head of MDHS and all the welfare money, and Nancy New is responsible for writing sub-grants with the welfare money, Brett Favre claims he did not know where the money was coming from. So as I covered in my other videos, in May of 2019, it was reported to the governor that Davis was misappropriating funds. The governor reported it to the state auditor, which in turn forced the retirement of John Davis. The state auditor, Shad White, got involved and began investigating MDHS.
This is one of the largest public embezzlement cases in state history. This is a sprawling conspiracy.
Even though the governor knew that this was going on, texts show that he still advised Favre on how to word a proposal to get more welfare funding for the volleyball project. Bryant appointed former FBI Special Agent in Charge Christopher Freeze to take Davis's place. Favre texted Governor Bryant and asked how it might impact the volleyball facility. Governor Bryant replied, "I will handle that. Long story, but had to make a change. But I will call Nancy and see what it will take." Bryant then texts Nancy New, "Just left Brett Favre. Can we help him with his project? We should meet soon to see how I can make sure we keep your projects on course." Later that day, New texted Favre to tell him that she would be meeting with the governor in 2 days. She says, "He wants me to continue to help you and us get our project done." With Mr. Freeze in place at the top of the welfare agency, Brett Favre and Nancy New tried to put together a proposal for more volleyball funding that would get approved. One text even suggested that they put Governor Bryant's name on the building. Favre told New that Bryant said she would have to submit proper paperwork to MDHS. The governor told Favre on a phone call that he had already seen Favre's proposal. Favre texted Nancy New, "The governor said to me just a second ago that he has seen the funding proposal, but hint, hint, you need to reword it to get it accepted." Nancy New had questions about how it should be reworded, but instead of having a conversation directly with the governor, she relied on what the governor would tell Brett Favre. And this is what the text showed. "Hopefully, she can put more details into the proposal," Bryant said, according to a text that Favre forwarded to Nancy New, like how many times the facility will be used and how many children will be served and for what specific purpose. Favre later texted, "I really feel like he is trying to figure out a way to get it done without actually saying it." So Governor Bryant is claiming that he first learned that welfare funds were going towards the construction of the volleyball facility on July the 16th of 2019. But in September of 2019, Brett Favre, Nancy New, Governor Bryant, and Christopher Freeze meet once again to discuss the construction of the volleyball facility. Although the texts illustrate the governor's support for the program around that time, Governor Bryant said in an April 2022 interview, so 2.5 years later, with Mississippi Today, that he rejected the request from Nancy New and Brett Favre to further fund the project. He says, "I stood up and I said no. I remember a meeting with Nancy New and Chris Freeze, and maybe it was one other one and me. And she came in one more time, volleyball, and she said, my budgets have been cut and I can't do all of these things. And that's another thing, budgets are cut. So I'm thinking somebody's watching over spending. And then she said, and oh, by the way, can we have the money for the volleyball? And I said, no, we're not spending anything right now. That is terminated." So I personally have a few issues with what he says here. First of all, he acts like there could have been somebody else in the room, but he's really not sure. He would have known if it was Brett Favre in the room. I mean, Brett Favre is Brett Favre, and he would have remembered that. So it's like he's trying to cover his tracks without lying, but he is basically lying. He's got to, because also the way that he talks about the spending and the spending being cut and somebody's watching the money, he is the one that reported the misappropriation of funds. So he already knew that somebody was watching the money and that the whole department was being watched. In November of 2019, a new governor is elected because Governor Bryant had just completed his second term. Under Christopher Freeze, MDHS reinstated its bid process for the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families funds and all their subgrants. And even though Nancy New's nonprofit was under investigation and had been raided by the auditor's office months earlier, the welfare agency notified Ms. New in December of 2019 that she had won another grant for the upcoming year. That month, Governor Bryant texted Nancy New to ask if she had received the award. "Yes, we did," New responded to the former governor. "From all the craziness going on, we had been made to believe we were not getting refunded. But we did. Someone was definitely pulling for us behind the scenes. Thank you." So Governor Bryant responded to this with a smiley face. Something I haven't talked about in any of my videos is Nancy New's relationship with the governor. As it turns out, Miss New and the governor's wife, Miss Bryant, are really tight. As a matter of fact, there are texts of them sharing clothes and stopping by each other's house if they needed something to wear. In January 2020, Brett Favre and his foundation, Favre for Hope Foundation, are named the driving force behind the funds for the volleyball facility by an Associated Press member. 2 days after he left office, Governor Bryant agreed by text to accept stock in Prevacus. He had been offered stock before, but Bryant said he could not do anything until he got out of the office, so 2 days later, he was offered it. So Jacob Vanlandingham, founder of Prevacus, texted Governor Bryant on January the 16th of 2020 and said, "Now that you're unemployed, I'd like to give you a company package for all your help. We want and need you on our team." "Sounds good," responded the former governor, who was getting ready to take over a private sector lobbying firm. "Where would be the best place to meet? I am now going to get on it hard." In February of 2020, State Auditor Shad White announces charges for conspiracy. 6 arrests were made. At this time, the governor distanced himself from Prevacus and said it was all a misunderstanding, and he never intended to accept stock in that company. So I know we just did this, but let's go over it one more time. "Now that you're unemployed, I'd like to give you a company package for all your help," Prevacus founder Jacob Vanlandingham wrote in a January the 16th, 2020 text to Governor Bryant 2 days after he left office. "We want and need you on our team." And Governor Bryant responds with, "Sounds good. Where would be the best place to meet? I am now going to get on it hard." So now Governor Bryant is trying to say that that was all a big misunderstanding and he never intended to accept the stock or go to work with the company, even though he said he was going to get on it hard and asked where to meet. So back in 2020, when all of this broke, Brett Favre told Mississippi Today that he had never discussed the volleyball field with Governor Bryant. And as far as Prevacus, he said that the project was about economic development, plain and simple. But the text messages revealed that Favre really had personal motives at heart. In early 2021, at which time Prevacus scrapped its plans to build a facility in Mississippi and sold its drug to Florida-based Odyssey Health, Prevacus founder CEO Jacob Vanlandingham was added to Odyssey's board of directors, and Favre took on the role as the sports advisory board for the company. Odyssey has recently been working to scrub all of its connections to Brett Favre and Jacob Vanlandingham. But there was a key press release from its archives, which as early as mid-August of 2020 highlighted the prominence of both Vanlandingham and Brett Favre in the company. So that's where I'm going to end this video. Y'all stay tuned for the third part of the Brett Favre scandal and part 5 of my video series on the Mississippi welfare embezzlement scheme. So far, what do y'all think? Did Brett Favre convince the governor and the overseers of the welfare system in the state to invest over $2 million from the welfare funds to try to enrich himself through the potential success of this concussion treatment? I think he did. My name is Jessica. If random news and current events are your thing, then I'm your girl. Like, share, and leave me a comment. Thanks for watching.